All right, guys, welcome back to No Dog in the Fight, episode 4. Um, Interesting week in fantasy this week, wouldn't you say so, Nick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just teams that are players that you give up on and you either drop or you finally move to your bench and then bam, that's their breakout. That was me with
hmm
Trevor Lawrence in one of my leagues.
That was me with Calvin Ridley in 3 of my leagues.
Yep.
Um, well, and like I want to kind of lead this off too with starting off. Like I know we've talked about it off the record, but wouldn't you agree to say like quarterback play is down this year? Like
It's
we're just not seeing like these big time like scores from quarterbacks like we've seen in the past.
well, that's why, I was telling you that because I feel like this is every other year. I feel like
hmm
we'll have a big year for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And then the next year, it's like everybody's just like, well, I'm lucky to get 15.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, hell, that's where I've been. I have been through a quarterback carousel between Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, and now I'm back to Justin Fields again. And so it's just so sporadic. And because again, I mean, like, again, with the Trevor Lawrence thing, I know we'll talk about him later, but goes off for 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 passing touchdowns.
hmm
I mean, where has that been? You know? And so it's just all around. And then you've got people like CJ Stroud puts up like 40 points and then he throws 3 interceptions this week. And it's not just fantasy play, it's just overall play. Quarterback play has been down.
Well, and it's like almost like total yards gained and touchdowns are both down this year. You know, you look at some of these quarterbacks and there were some guys that were throwing for like 350 yards a game and now it's like you'll be lucky to get 275 consistently out of someone.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like too it's like all these offenses are they're quick to not necessarily abandon the pass, but they're quick to change schematically to something else on the fly, I guess you can say. Um, so I don't know. Just a weird year in fantasy this year. But well, going into that, I know you mentioned Trevor Lawrence. We'll go into studs and duds, and why don't we go ahead and talk about your studs for the week?
Yeah. So first again was Trevor Lawrence. He had a really big week with the 2 rushing touchdowns. I think he
Mm-hmm.
had 5 rushes for 17 yards and the 2 touchdowns, and they threw 2 touchdowns. So he had 32 points. And so, I mean, again, it's just so sporadic. You don't know who, it's almost a guessing game.
Mm-hmm.
But he was the best statistically in fantasy. And then running back, you had Saquon that scored 30 even. He had what was it, 2 receiving touchdowns? Yeah, it was 2 receiving touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't do that much on the ground, but he did have some because I think Tommy DeVito had 3 passing touchdowns and 2 of them were to Saquon, and then the other was to Darius Slayton.
Yep.
But then you had Calvin Ridley. I know he's like your favorite fantasy player.
He
Uh
is he is about to turn into my
yeah,
Michael Thomas.
yeah. Because he had over 100 yards, he had at least 7 receptions and 2 touchdowns out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Because they had even asked Doug Peterson about it. They were like, why is he not getting targets? And he came out and was like, no, they're looking at him. He's just not open, or they're not pulling the trigger on it. And then this week, of course, he goes off for basically a week 1 performance.
Yeah.
And Kittle, again, this is an exact mirror as last year. The first like 8 to 10 games, you're like, oh God, like it's Kittle. He's dropping off. He's not that good anymore. He's not getting targets. And now he's consistently putting up 20s each week. And
Yeah.
he's either having a massive 80-yard touchdown like you had last week, or this week he had a short little toe tap touchdown, but still he's getting all these touchdowns and he's becoming another big receiver in this game. And Brock Purdy has stepped it up a lot, so that's really helping George Kittle's game. And so The 49ers just produce fantasy monsters.
Yeah. Well, and going back to Calvin Ridley too, I'm his stats, and Calvin Ridley is one of those guys that has to get at least 8 to 9 targets a game for him to actually put up numbers, and even then, it's not a guarantee. And obviously, somebody hears that and it's like, well, obviously, he gets more targets, he gets more receptions, but that wasn't the case when he had 8 targets in week 2 against Kansas City and had 2 receptions, or when he had 8 receptions or 8 targets for 4 receptions against Indianapolis. So he's got to be targeted a lot. He's only got 4 touchdowns for the year. So, but
And
again, like you said, this is just one of those weeks that everything worked out right, and it was against a Tennessee team that's obviously not that great. So they were able to exploit the 9 targets, 7 receptions that he got.
yeah,
So
what was it? Did he score 2 touchdowns in week 1?
yeah, no, it was just one.
No. Okay. Because I knew he had 2 this week. I was just wondering if he just had the 2-2 games. Yeah, Calvin Ridley's one of those players that just it's tough to have on your team because you don't know whether to start them or sit them. And
Mhm.
it becomes like a Michael Thomas experiment where they're just starting and like you did, as soon as you sit them, it's just and then there's the big game, and
After
that's
10
probably it.
weeks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so frustrating.
Yeah. Well, getting into duds. Our first dud, I mean, this isn't really like anything crazy, like everybody performed about how they were expected to or projected to this week. But Zach Wilson had a really bad week. I mean, he had 81 yards passing, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception, and had 15 yards. He has been now moved down to 3rd on the depth chart for the Jets. I think this is the end of the Zach Wilson era at the Jets. But I mean, he couldn't do anything against Buffalo. There was it was and it was a mirror of what happened week 1, because week 1 he came out of the works and there was hope, and now they play Buffalo again and he didn't amount to anything. 81 yards in a game, even before getting benched, is just so bad for somebody that's supposed to be a
I
starting
mean,
quarterback.
he spent an off season with a Hall of Fame quarterback as his mentor, and I just don't understand how you get statistically worse than last year.
Right.
I just don't get that.
Yeah. For running back, I've got Josh Jacobs. 14 rushes for 39 yards, and then 1 reception for 12 yards. I mean, it's no secret the Raiders are a dumpster fire. But if they want Josh Jacobs to produce, he is going to have to touch the ball at least 20 times a game, like that. And I know like they maybe have a scheme that they want to do. They want to get Devontae Adams more involved. That's fine, but it's like they can't find a happy medium. And with Aiden O'Connell at quarterback right now, you would expect that they're going to throw the ball, run the ball a little bit more and rely on Josh Jacobs. But him having only 14 touches that's not going to help the Raiders' position or situation at all right now. With my receiver, this kind of goes hand in hand with Zach Wilson. Garrett Wilson. I mean, Garrett Wilson has
Poor
been,
guy.
yeah, I know he's in hell right now. He really is. He had 8 targets, 2 receptions for 9 yards. And I can almost guarantee you that those 8 targets he got, I would say at least 5 of them or 4 of them were probably nowhere close to him. Overthrown, underthrown, wherever.
You put him on the Chiefs, or not even the Chiefs, like, that's far. You put him on any team that has a semi-capable, hell, even, say Derek Carr's healthy, put him with the Saints. Garrett Wilson should be a top 12 receiver in the league.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then on top of that, too, he had a fumble as well, so turnover. So that may not have helped his position in getting the ball. Just because, if I throw it to him, he's going to fumble, So, but yeah, I mean, it was just a bad week for the Jets, all in all. And then finally, this is a little bit skewed because he did get hurt, but Mark Andrews only had 4.3 points. The only reason I have him as a dud is because position wise, he's the fourth ranked tight end. I could have put Cole Kmet on here. He only had 5 points, or 5 or 6, I can't remember. But you would hope Mark Andrews would produce more, but I mean, just obviously with the situation of him getting hurt, he wasn't able to produce more. So that's the only reason why I have him as a dud. He's out for the season, so that's like insult to injury there. So, but moving on into our waiver pickups, Nick, looks like one of our waiver pickups are very similar.
They're the same.
Exactly.
Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker the third is most likely out next week with an oblique injury, and so I don't think anything special is going to happen. But I think Charbonnet is going to fill into that KW3 role.
Yep.
And I think he's going to fill in nicely.
Yeah, well, and he's been putting up consistent stats. Granted, they haven't been great. Like, he's consistently putting up around 5 points a game, which is not bad for a secondary back behind someone like Kenneth Walker III. This week, he had 12.9 points. He had 15 touches on the ground. He had 6 receptions. Obviously, that number is just going to go up because, like you said, Kenneth Walker is going to be out this week.
Well, he was already the receiving back to an extent for Seattle. They don't do it much, but he was getting more targets than KW3. And so it depends if they keep him in that same role and assume that role, he could be having some big weeks.
Yeah. And depending on the severity of the injury too, like this week may or may not be a great week to pick him up because they do play San Francisco next week. But that being said, they play Dallas after that, which Dallas's defense, as we have seen, can be hot or cold this year, more hot than cold as of late. So I think it would be a beneficial pickup for Zach Charbonnet. And then who was your second waiver pickup?
Same concept here. I'm going Isaiah Likely, the backup tight end hybrid receiver for Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this exactly the same thing happened last year, but the problem was Tyler Huntley was the starting quarterback at this point.
Yeah.
Isaiah Likely came in last year. He's a very, very he's 6'4", 220, 230.
Yeah.
So he's really more of a receiver that's lining up on the line at tight end. But he did pretty well last year when he came in and started over Mark Andrews when Mark Andrews was out for his little bit of time. And so I think now that they're coming in that role with a healthy Lamar and the offense for the Ravens is still clicking. And, we've seen the development of Lamar as a passer, especially with like Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. OBJ now is having a little bit of a resurgence. I think Isaiah Likely will be another one of those names that you can fit in there and that he can, and I'm not saying he's going to be a fantasy star, but he's a tight end that could get you anywhere from 8 to 12 points fairly consistently, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and for my second one, I picked Chuba Hubbard. The reason I picked Chuba Hubbard is I'm starting to see a trend of them using him over Miles Sanders a little bit more. The Miles Sanders experiment is not really working out at Carolina like I think they thought it was going to. On the weeks, I mean, they've got to treat Chuba Hubbard like a traditional running back. Like, for example, the week he had 19 touches on the ground, 88 yards and a touchdown, 16 points. He also had one reception for 2 yards that week, but they have to treat him like a traditional running back. They can use Miles Sanders as that swing back, but he's going to have to get close to 20 touches a game for that to happen. What has hurt Carolina is the fact that they get down early and have to abandon the run. They play Tennessee, Tampa Bay, and New Orleans the next 3 weeks, then Atlanta. So there is potential there for him to be utilized as a running back, and when them not getting down big early and him getting more touches on the ground. So moving into sell high, buy low. I'll go first with my sell high since we've already mentioned him. Sell Calvin Ridley as high as you can. Just put whatever spin you want to. He's back. He scored 2 touchdowns. He had 100 yards. Whoop-de-doo. It's not going to happen again. He only scores the numbers that he scores once every 4 weeks, like that he's projected to score, or boom. So if you want to wait every 4 weeks to get production out of him, that's great. If not, sell him and get you something that you need.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really agree with that. If you're doing a dynasty league, get you some picks. If you're doing, just your standard regular, go and get you a low end wide receiver 1 or 2 or a flex and call it a day.
Yep.
Mine is Saquon Barkley, and I feel like you can definitely put a spin on Saquon of getting something really big out of him, like another running back one. If you I wouldn't trade him for another running back. I would probably swap him over. So to a receiver, but I could see you getting like a Mike Evans. I know I use Mike Evans a lot because he's just to me, Mike Evans is just a staple at the receiver,
Oh,
in
yeah.
fantasy. I mean, he is just your most consistent floor player with boom capability. But Saquon, I'm scared Saquon's going to get hurt soon, because as soon as you see that when the offense relies 100% on him, that's when he gets hurt. You
Yeah.
see when last year they were kind of balanced and you had Daniel Jones actually having a good year. Saquon wasn't having to get 35 touches a game. He was just getting his normal 20 carries plus maybe 5 receptions. But
Right.
now with Tommy DeVito, again, stats are skewed. He threw 3 touchdowns. 2 of them were to Saquon, because what Saquon can do after the catch. And I'm not saying that Saquon won't put up numbers. He will. And you may be disappointed for a week or two after you sell him, but then I'm just scared that he's going to get hurt, or they're going to get out of playoff contention, and not necessarily a holdout, but he only sign the 1 year? It was just a 1 year.
If I'm not mistaken, he only signed a 1 year. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he could definitely oh, hey, my quad's cramping up. I need to sit out a couple weeks and sit.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I would definitely sell Saquon. But you can get him for a lot. So
Well, who are you buying low?
I'm going Chris Olave. Chris Olave has struggled this year to score touchdowns, and it's weird because we saw when Jabu came out, and when Derek Carr has not played, Chris Olave has done well. It's pretty funny. And Jabu's coming in. I think Chris Olave, especially now with Michael Thomas being out, I think it's truly like, okay, Chris Olave is my receiver 1. He is going to be my first option for most routes that I look and see. And Chris Olave is very much like Garrett Wilson, obviously, both from Ohio State, both same draft class, but they're going to get open. You just got to get it to them.
Yep.
And I think he's going to play a little harder. I think he's been very frustrated with quarterback play. And again, I'm not saying Jabu is any better, but at least Jabu, even if he's covered, he's still throwing it to him, so it
I
don't
was about to
matter.
say Jabu's a gunslinger, man. Like
Yeah.
he's not going to check down. I mean, he's going. It doesn't matter if Taysom Hill is running the seam and he's triple covered. If Jabu thinks he's open, the ball is going to go in that direction.
He will crow hop that 15-yard crossing pass and get it somewhere. Yeah. So Chris Olave will get more touches. He'll get more targets, more receptions, more yards, more touchdowns, more everything in the next couple of weeks. So, but based on recent performance, you could probably get him for pretty cheap.
Yeah. Well, and that goes into my buy low. And my buy low this week is Cortland Sutton. Nick, you tell me if you've heard anything out of Cortland Sutton this week, like this year.
He's been very quiet.
Very quiet, right?
Yeah.
I would agree with that. But in the past, he's had a touchdown in each of his one touchdown in each of his past 5 games. Like I said earlier before we got on, for the past 5 weeks, he scored 14 and a half or more in the past 5 weeks. And the only one where he didn't, he still had 10.9. He had two receptions for 29 yards and a touchdown. So he is like he's like an off-brand Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
He's going to put up consistent numbers. They're just going to be a little bit lower.
Yeah.
But he is the number 1 target for Russ at the Broncos. He really is. And with their offensive struggles at Denver, he's kind of been on the low of the totem pole. But the dude is position ranked number 19. But like I said, he's just had consistency. Regardless of how many, he's had as many as 11 targets. He's had as little as 3. In the past 5 weeks, it was 6, 6, 3, 11, and 5. So, and the bad thing about it is, the week he had 11, he had 17.3 points. The week he had 6 against Green Bay, he had 19. So, I think Sutton would be a good addition as a wide receiver 2. Yeah, I know it's very hard to trade for a wide receiver 1 or a running back, or really any kind of 1 right now. Like, you have to kind of finagle some trades, and some people are just like no-goes, untouchables. But I feel like you can get him as a wide receiver 2 or flex, and he is definitely going to add value to a team.
Yep.
Well, that moves us on into the final segment for best possible lineup this week. So, Nick, if you don't mind, I'll go first with mine because it's mine's pretty easy to talk about. It's Tua against the Jets. We just saw what Josh Allen did to the Jets defense, how as a team, the Jets are just in purgatory right now. So give me Tua. He's going to light it up. The thing about Tua, dude, is he's not throwing many interceptions. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's got 8 for the year. So actually he has a little bit more than I thought. I was looking at the wrong stat. I was looking at fumbles, my bad. But yeah, he's got 8 for the year. But they're also against 2 against the Giants, 1 against New England, 1 against the Chargers.
He's a gunslinger.
Yeah, he's a gunslinger, and in a high pass offense like Miami, he's going to throw
interceptions.
Yeah, you'll have your interceptions, but when he's going out there and again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, leading off the episode with the quarterbacks, it's not like he had 466 yards against Chargers, right? Week 1. The highest he's had since then was 325 against Las Vegas. Everything else has been hovering around 300.
Yep.
So it's just crazy. But yeah, I think he's going to put up really good numbers. I honestly expect him to have 2 or more touchdowns, no interceptions, and a decent bit of passing yards this week.
I agree. So my quarterback is Dak. And I feel like every time we say Dak, everybody you hear it and you chuckle to yourself.
Oh God.
Yeah, yeah, you're like, oh, okay. But Dak's been putting up good numbers. Crazily enough. And it's just that entire team is just kind of flowing right now. He's getting the freaking rushing touchdowns because Tony Pollard isn't. I know Tony Pollard scored his first touchdown in however many days last week, but Dak is kind of that. I don't know who to compare him to, but he's throwing consistently 2 touchdowns, and every other week he's rushing 1. So it's been pretty good play out of him, and he hasn't turned the ball over much. He's been a little bit more consistent on that. So Dak's gonna have a good week against the Commanders.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then with my running back, I know I told everybody to sell this guy high a couple weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? Let me look. Or is it right here? Maybe in week 1. I can't remember. But I definitely told somebody at some point, or told y'all at some point in time, that you need to sell Gus Edwards. So maybe in episode 1, actually. Sell Gus Edwards high. But he's a start this week, I feel like. Since week 7, he has scored 17 or more points except for 1 week. He has scored a touchdown for every week for the past 5 weeks. So dude's getting pretty consistent. They are becoming more balanced in terms of instead of being run heavy in Baltimore, like they're actually relying on the pass a little bit more. I mean, like you said earlier, everybody's getting involved. So that's going to open up the run a little bit more. He's getting a little bit of receiving, not much. He's getting some receptions here and there, but I mean, he's scoring touchdowns. 4, 5, 6, 7. He's had 9 touchdowns in the past 5 weeks. So I feel like he's a start again, especially against the Chargers defense. I know that's hard for you to hear, but I feel like he's a start against Chargers defense.
31st ranked.
Yeah.
And that's what's so I picked up Gus Edwards as well. And that's where I still like never mind. I'll just put it this way. So I've got Gus Edwards as well. Gus Edwards is such a hard start for me.
Yeah.
Because I've got Chris McCaffrey and I've got Travis Etienne and I've also got Derrick Henry and Kenneth Walker III.
Yep.
Where does because again, like it's just like every week I'm like, okay, Gus Edwards isn't going to score more than these guys. And he scores consistently with them, if not more. And it's just so hard to pull that trigger and say, okay, I'm starting Gus Edwards over Travis Etienne, or I'm starting Gus Edwards over Kenneth Walker III. It's hard to do.
Well, and the bad thing about it is that now it opens up. Now, okay, I could trade him, but is the value of Gus Edwards? Because I mean, you got to think a lot of times in trades it's a name game.
Yeah, if you're trading with a casual fantasy player, you won't get much out of them.
No, you will get basically a borderline flex player for Gus Edwards. I mean, maybe a decent like receiver 2 or a tight end, but if you're not getting one of the top 3 or 4 tight ends, then you're losing that trade.
Yep.
Yeah.
But my running back, and I'll say this is a hot take to kind of watch.
Yeah.
I put Derrick Henry as the best potential running back this week. And I feel like that's hot. And what gets hotter is I think this is Derrick Henry's last big game of his career. I think this is his last, like, there goes Henry kind of game.
Huh.
Derrick Henry has gotten older.
Yeah.
Derrick Henry has lost a lot of speed. And, the first couple of years, everybody's like, we don't know how to stop this. And now it's pretty simple. You just got to put a hat into his legs and he's out.
Yeah.
And his yards per carry have diminished so bad. Now with Will Levis coming in and they're like, okay, we're not doing this, I formation running up the gut 3 times. Like, this isn't our offense anymore. We don't have Ryan Tannehill running the show. So I really do, but they're playing the Panthers this week. So I think this is almost like not a legacy game, but like a
farewell, a send-off.
Almost like it's like one of those, like, in basketball when Paul Pierce was with the Clippers and then all of a sudden he scores 35 at the Clippers. I feel like this is what it's going to be like. It's going to be Derrick Henry coming out and putting up 25, 30 fantasy points this week. And then you'll probably never want to start him again.
Put him on the horse and ride him off on the sunset.
Yep. And so again, because as soon as, I think, in my opinion, as soon as he gets traded or loses in free agency, somebody's going to pick him up as a running back too. And he's going to be like a Dalvin Cook, where you'll just kind of hear about him every now and then just for name's sake, but not because he did something good.
Yeah.
Again, could be a very hot take, but that's what I see this game being for Derrick Henry.
Yeah. Well, what you got for receiver?
Tank Dell, talking about old people. Let's bring in the new guys. So Tank Dell has been CJ Stroud's number one, and Tank has had arguably probably the best rookie receiver season so far. Would you agree?
I mean, yeah, honestly, yeah, especially over the past, because when you think of rookie receivers, right now you think of Tank Dell and Jordan Addison.
Yeah. I mean,
And
Jordan Addison's been good, but Tank Dell, I mean, just had 149 receiving yards. And I mean,
agreed.
it's almost consistent. Tank Dell, and now Noah Brown is out as well.
Hmm.
So Tank Dell, I just feel like has the opportunity to just run away with, solidifying him, saying like, he is a smaller guy to an extent. Well, yeah, I'd put him over Zay Flowers as well. Uh,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think Tank is gonna have a really big game next week. And again, they're playing the Jaguars, and he diced them up first game, and there's no reason I don't think I think this Jaguars Texans game is going to be somewhat of a shootout.
Hmm.
And Texans have shown the passing capability of staying in that. And so even if Jacksonville goes up, Texans will be passing. And so they're coming into they're really kind of moving forward to a very pass heavy offense, especially with just David Singletary, or Devin Singletary, uh, getting most of the carries. That I think Tank could have a big week.
Yeah.
How about you?
My receiver is kind of. I mean, it's kind of the same logic you're using with Tank Dell, talking about being the primary target. CeeDee Lamb. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the past 4 weeks, dude. You got to think. CeeDee Lamb had over 150 yards between weeks 8 and 10, and then last week against Carolina, only had 38 yards, but he still had a touchdown and he still had 6 receptions. I mean, it was against Carolina, so Dak was able to spread the ball out more, anyways. You know, like because if Carolina goes in with their shitty defense and they say, "Oh, we're going to double team,"
Mm-hmm.
then Dak's just going to spread the ball out to Brandon Cooks or whoever it is.
Yep.
Um, so, and they play Washington too, and we've seen that Washington's defense is not great. I mean, they allowed 31 points against the Giants this past week. So, I think it's going to get bad, and I think CD's just going to explode. I would not be surprised if he scores in the 30s again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and then with my tight end, I'm going with Kittle. And
Good pick.
yeah, Kittle, and I'll let you explain it what you were talking about earlier. I mean, Kittle's had 20 or more points in the past 3 weeks against Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and Tampa Bay. Seahawks don't really play well against a tight end, if I'm not mistaken. But the dude's either scoring. I mean, he's also had 90 yards or more in the past 9 games or 3 games as well. He's getting more targets. I think Debo and McCaffrey getting hurt was good for him in terms of letting Brock Purdy know, hey, I am an option. And then with what you said earlier, if you want to explain that a little bit more about what happened last year, and it's basically
Yeah,
happening
I
again.
mean it's a direct mirrors last year. The first 8 to 10 games, everybody counts out George Kittle because he's a blocker. There's so many weapons on that offense that it's hard to spread the ball out, and have one guy consistently. And I mean, honestly, if you look at it between Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Debo, and George Kittle is probably fourth on that priority list to getting the ball to.
Yeah.
Um, but that's not knocking George Kittle. That's just, I mean, you were surrounded by talent.
Fantasy
Well,
monsters.
exactly. Well, with the injuries, just like last year with Debo getting hurt, it just opened it up a little bit, and then all of a sudden, like, all right, hop on my back, let's go.
Yep.
And week 11 hits, and bam, George Kittle is scoring 20 points each week with it guaranteed a touchdown. I feel like that's where we're at right now. Is we're in that point where George Kittle is just every week you're like, oh, do I start George? It depends on who your tight ends are, honestly. But
Yeah.
like in one league, I have George Kittle and Sam Laporta, and that's where I've been struggling with. Okay, Sam Laporta has been the number 3 tight end, I think, and or maybe 2. I don't know. He's right up there with George Kittle, and so it's like I don't know who to start, but right now it's looking like George Kittle. So I did put my best possible as Sam Laporta, but I mean George Kittle. I'll just have to agree with you. The more that I sit here and think about it, I think Sam Laporta is going to have a good week because that's my original pick. But I think George Kittle's just going to have another big week.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, I guess. Well, and then also, I know you had a little bit you wanted to talk about another tight end as well.
Yes. So this is not me saying start him. I've talked about him before. But just somebody to watch, especially if say you had a Mark Andrews, or someone like that who's hurt. And Taysom Hill is another guy to watch. And I know I've said this before. He didn't have a great week last week, but now with Derek Carr out, Taysom Hill, he's probably going to get double as many touches as he got last week. Just because, when we joke and say like Jabu comes in or Jameis Winston, that he comes in and starts, they almost play a 2 quarterback system when Derek Carr is out.
Yeah.
And so I think Taysom Hill is going to come in. He could get you a rushing touchdown. He could get you a passing touchdown or a receiving touchdown. But either way it works, I think he will score 1 touchdown one of those ways and could be just somebody interesting to watch.
There is more opportunity for the gadget system that they do with Taysom Hill when they don't have Derek Carr there.
Yes.
Because they try to rely on Derek Carr's passing ability more.
Oof.
And woof. Yeah. But with Jabu, it's a different story because like we know Jabu can pass, but if it's to our team, we'll see.
30
So
for 30, the Jabu series.
yeah. So there's definitely more opportunity for Taysom Hill there with Jameis Winston calling plays.
Yeah.
And then finally, if you want to go over your flex too, I like your flex, and it's mainly because like he's starting for me in the actual position spot.
Yeah. I've got Jaylen Warren. I've been silent on all of the Steelers. But I feel like this Jaylen Warren is going to eventually start getting more touches than Najee. Just on the playmaking ability, on the, he's more elusive, he's quicker, and he's going to get the passing or the receiving. And so Jaylen Warren, now with Matt Canada gone, they're going to come in and they're going to try to get things a little bit more basic to help out Kenny Pickett, who has been terrible,
who needs as much help as he can get.
And there's going to be a lot of swing passes, a lot of screens, and Jaylen Warren is going to take some of them for, those break off 20 to 30 yard plays. He's going to rush the ball at least 12 to 15 times. Jaylen Warren will have a big week because they're about to get very simple with the offense. And I mean, not to mention he is probably their best offensive player right now. Yeah, I mean, I would say he's their best offense player. I mean, I'm not a big George Pickens guy just because George Pickens really hasn't shown me much besides his highlight catches.
Yeah, he's the shining spot in the darkness that is the Pittsburgh offense right now, which is crazy because like they've been outgained every single game.
Yeah.
But that they've won. And what's their record right now? Aren't they like
they're 7-3.
Yeah, they're 7.
They have the same record as the 49ers.
It's wild.
No, it makes no sense.
None.
And that's the thing too. Like, it's so funny because if you really like, to a casual NFL fan, you hear the names George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Najee Harris, Pat Fryermuth. That should be a good offense.
Hmm.
And then you throw Kenny Pickett in there, who has been terrible. I mean, just he can't throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. I saw a reel of it today, and it was literally every single pass Kenny Pickett has thrown past the line of scrimmage in the last game, and I think he had 2 completions past the line of scrimmage. It is insane.
I
And
can't t-
so,
I can't tell you how many times he overthrew his receivers. Like
yes.
it's like when he throws it past the line of scrimmage, like he is so inaccurate 10 yards down the field.
And I like to call it the Mac Jones effect
Mhm.
because quarterbacks, when they start hearing some, especially the young quarterbacks, I'll say, the Zach Wilsons, the Mac Jones, the Kenny Pickett's, once the fan base turns on you, you're screwed because
Oh yeah.
your confidence is gone. Now you're hesitating on throws, you're overthinking throws, you're missing wide open receivers because you get too excited. You're like, oh, here's my chance. This will look good. And you overthrow it. Look at Mac Jones's last interception last week when he threw off his back foot and missed a wide open Jaceki for a touchdown through an interception to seal the game. You know, once you lose that confidence, especially as a young receiver or young quarterback, it it's hard to get that back.
Yeah. Well, and just for statistic purposes, I just looked that the most passing yards Kenny Pickett has had all year is 235. That
Mm-hmm.
was like week 2 or 3. But well, that gets into my flex. And again, this guy is a staple of fantasy football. It's Mike Evans. I mean, he's guaranteed for a touchdown. He's
Yeah.
guaranteed for especially uh, with average to decent quarterback play. Mike Evans can still be a monster, and that's what he's getting right now. Like Baker Mayfield, by no means is just like the absolute best quarterback in the NFL right now, but he's a lot better than what we've had in the past. I mean, he is he's averaging about 250 yards a game, give or take, passing. Um, but he's also be able to pass in the red zone, and it was something that we have not been able to do in the past couple of years, or the Buccaneers haven't. But with Mike Evans, I mean, like I said, he's guaranteed for a touchdown near about every single game. He's a red zone threat. He's a deep threat, big body guy.
Even
And
from the 1 yard line. I
yeah,
mean,
and when he goes out there and if he gets, I mean, there's been 1, 2, 3, 4, there's been 5 times out of their 11 games this year, he's had 10 or more targets. And against Indianapolis, he's going to get 10 or more targets. And I would not be surprised if he's going 20 plus this week.
and that's something, I just want to hear your opinion on it.
Hmm.
Especially you as a Bucks fan. I know they didn't reach a contract. Do you think he's going to test free agency? Or do you think they're going to sit there because and this is no offense to the Bucks, but imagine putting him on somewhere that has like an established quarterback,
Yeah.
what, year 12 Mike Evans can do. I think
Imagine,
you could, I
imagine him
mean,
right now at Dallas.
or the Chargers next to Keenan
Yeah.
Allen. Sorry, I know that's my team, but you
Yeah.
know, just
Well,
I think he's
so,
got some crazy years left.
oh yeah. And so I think he's going to test the waters out because I don't know, it would be sad to to see someone like Mike Evans, who is a franchise player. Like he's one of those guys. He's kind of like a Kobe. It's like you want to see him come in as a Buccaneer and leave the league as a Buccaneer. Um, so it's going to be weird. Seeing him test it. I don't know if maybe it was like the Buccaneers saying, "Hey, we can't sign you to an extension, but we can give you a new contract at the end of the year." Or what. I'm not really sure what the thought process is because I know they like to pay their defensive players pretty big. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of been the Tampa Bay core for the past several years. Even in the dark years, they've had a decent defense. I mean, Linebacker core is great. They've invested in the defensive line. They always keep young, fresh defensive backs. Granted, injuries plagued them 2 years ago, so it sucks. But in the same token, it's just one of those things. It's like, I got to see the logic behind it. I have to see the logic of not giving him the extension he wants. Maybe he thinks he can get more money elsewhere, and the Bucks didn't see that. Maybe they want him to see that those other teams are also not going to have that confidence that he will be able to stay as healthy and produce as much in those upper years of his career. So, but
what,
we'll
he's
see.
on track for what is this, the 11th season in a row for 1,000 yards?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
Insane.
I mean, it's basically guaranteeing that you have 1,000-yard receiver on your team.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't know. We'll see. What I don't, especially for him, what I hope doesn't happen is he gets coaxed into getting paid and then going to a team like Las Vegas or going to a team like,
Yeah.
I mean, I would venture as far to say is Arizona, because I don't think he's going to be able to produce. I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be able to help him produce the way he's done over the past several years at Tampa Bay.
I would love to see him go to a contending team, not be not a sellout, but go get money at a low team that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, as we have seen in the past couple years, a very realistic possibility. Rangers trying to talk right now, but a very realistic possibility could be him going to the Titans.
God, yeah, I'm not. I've already stated my opinions on receivers going to die. But yeah, I don't know. I just wish, I wish he just went somewhere with a good quarterback that's contending.
Yeah,
and I mean, it could still be with the Bucks if whoever they decide to go with. I don't know if I don't think Baker's the franchise quarterback, but he's the placeholder, the kind of bridge player for the next.
The short-term answer.
Yeah. But no, I just, yeah. But from what I've heard though, Mike Evans loves Tampa Bay. I don't think he he was very public about his contract, saying like he really wanted to work something out because he wants to stay at Tampa Bay. But we'll see.
Yep. And this has been Grayson's off tangent thought featuring Ranger. Yeah, buddy, I know. But all right, guys. Well, that ends episode 4 of No Dog in the Fight. So make sure you go check us out on all of the socials and platforms that I list on the actual Jebboard mainstream, because I'm not going to list them here. So, but until next time, everybody, don't get faded.
Jebboard.